Uh, Actually, hi everybody. We're just talking off air. No, never mind us. Having a good time. This is, this
Teach him
is
how the
this is
sausage is made, Tom.
this is how well we always do it that way. I actually prefer starting the show with just like a little backstage. So yes, my understanding is yes on that, but we'll make sure. What we typically do with the Gashouse gang is we podcast it, but we also replay it at night for folks in the 8 o'clock hour. This being Veterans Day, we appreciate all three of you joining me on this work day and all of you joining us as well. I was also mentioning the guys. So I had Rich Gould, the former KPLR sports director in studio. What I love about Rich Gould, Bernie, is that you guys each taught me certain things. You taught me to speak my mind. You used to tell me, dude, you're in the clubhouse. Like, you can give opinion. You're in the Rams locker room. The guys respect you. You can give opinion. It's okay.
That's right.
Gould was the guy who was always like, hey, like when things got intense in any sporting media situation, any sports media situation, he'd be like, hey, you know what? We're this is great, isn't it? I mean, what a great job we have. He was the guy who always taught me to be calm and just relax. Like, what's the big deal? We're covering sports. We're not solving the world's problems. That's what we do here on the Gashouse Gang. Yeah. I enjoy this very much. The four of us getting together today to talk baseball. And let me start by saying thank you to our veterans. Thank you to the men and women of our country who have made the sacrifices to give us the freedom that we enjoy and continue to make sacrifices. And on that note, all of the families of veterans who continue to make sacrifices. We cannot thank you enough for all that you do. Today is a day of thanks. That is what Veterans Day is all about. So thank you from all of us here at KMOX. Gentlemen, we have so much to talk about. And on Mondays, it's all about the Cardinals. And that is what we are going to do. We're going to concentrate on baseball. And I talked to John Mozeliak yesterday, Bernie Miklasz, and we talked a little bit afterwards on Sports on a Sunday Morning about where they are right now. And, it's hard to figure how much salary they are going to reduce. It does depend on the conversations and the future that they have with Contreras, Arenado, Gray, Michaelis for that matter, Helsley. Where do you see all of this right now, Bernie, where the Cardinals stand coming out of the GM meetings? And aside from Contreras and maybe Gray, a little uncertainty about the future of the club.
Yeah, Contreras staying. I would anticipate Gray would stay. Michaelis and Matt's to be determined, but I at this point I would at least right now think that they'd be here. Arenado's definitely a maybe. Helsley is, I think, likely, and Goldie's gone. Kittredge is gone. Gibson, Lynn is gone, and we pretty much know everyone they have coming back. So I think they have a chance to have a respectable team. We've talked about this a lot. I mean, it's impossible to really put a mark on it because we have no idea what the exact roster will be even going into spring training. But they got the makings of having a respectable team, maybe even a slightly surprising team. But I do want to say this because I finally did my homework on this. The Cardinals won 83 games last year. And, given their run differential, the 83 wins was a really, really good total relative to what it should have been. They should have been 10 games under 500. So they were ahead of what they should have done, but that was because of the bullpen. And the bullpen was outstanding. It was the number one strength on the team. There was nothing even close to it. And that bullpen, more than any other factor, by far, was responsible for the really good record in one-run games and also the 83 and 79 record. Now, however, if they trade Helsley, which I would expect, and Kittredge is a free agent, he won't be back, you're taking out the heart of that bullpen. Last year, the Cardinals, 64-4 when they led through 7. That was the 7th best winning percentage by a team in the majors, 941. When they led through 8, they were 69-1. That was tied for the 2nd best winning percentage when you lead through 8. And Helsley and Kittredge were primarily responsible for that because in all of the games that the Cardinals won, when Helsley and Kittredge, if you combine the stats in Cardinals wins, 116 appearances, 116 innings, a 1.24 ERA. Now, you take those two out of the bullpen, and they have some capable guys. But if you remove Helsley and Kittredge out of the bullpen, right, which is certainly probable, if not definite, you're not the same team, because there's not a chance that you can replicate what you did last year in terms of dominating the other side when you took leads into the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th inning. I mean, that just can't be done again without those two guys. So that's the reality check. When I talk about some positives, the reality check, we must pay attention to it. Helsley and Kittredge out of there, not the same. The team strength is diminished. To what extent, we'll find out.
It is interesting. I mean, I would assume that Helsley is traded as well. You'll never get better value for him than right at this very moment. And for Kittredge, I would assume he is gone as a free agent as well. Although when I talked to Mozeliak, he did bring up Kittredge's name, and then he kind of paused and said, as you know, I don't talk about free agents, which made me kind of, even though I assume that he's gone, made me think about it twice because, maybe, but it's highly, highly doubtful. My question to you, Kevin, is let's assume the two are gone. Who replaces them in the bullpen?
Well, I mean, this is where we got to get into like the new way of thinking, right? Who was going to replace Devin Williams last year in Milwaukee when he got hurt? Some guy nobody had ever heard of before, and he was awesome. They had another guy named McGill who comes in throwing 98, 99, 100 miles an hour, and he gets people out. You've got to be able to find and develop those guys. You've got to be able to turn somebody in your system or somebody that's a lower level free agent signee who's got great stuff but maybe had command problems or pitch selection problems, pitch mix problems, and turn them into assets. Now, again, they did that with Jojo Romero. So I guess we got to find another Jojo Romero. Whether it's a righty or lefty is fine either way with me. But like you have to be able to do that. But also, we haven't talked much about this, guys, as far as an angle on the offseason, but I don't see why we shouldn't at least think that they can do both selling players and buying players. Now, maybe you're buying at half the cost that you're selling, right? So if we think Helsley's going to make $10, $11 million a year, maybe you're buying a $6 million reliever, but that's still saving you $4 million. And this market is loaded with relievers. So to me, I mean, unless they have to cut $100 million, they've already cut $60 million off the payroll. Unless they have to cut $100 million, I think we should probably consider that as a possibility too, that there are lesser additions that could slot in the 6th inning rather than maybe the 8th or the 9th inning that can back you up. But more importantly than any of that, it's more about finding those pieces like they found with Romero, where you take a guy that wasn't having success and find a way, find a role, find a tweak that puts them at the level where they're helping you.
Do you think they can replicate the Milwaukee model, Matt Pauley? And can they do it that quickly?
They can't do it quickly. There's so many, logistics, infrastructure, pitching, all the stuff that the Brewers have invested in and all the people that they have in that organization. It's going to take some time. But the good start was Chaim Bloom, because one of Bloom's specialties is finding pitchers who throw hard and you can have them become very effective relievers. And yeah, even if I think Wheeler brought up Jojo Romero, can you find guys that can transform into that? Can Ryan Fernandez take another step forward after a really good year? And something nobody's really talking about that I think is worth talking about, Tink Hintz has not shown the ability to make it through an entire season as a starter. If he comes into spring training and he is just as impressive with his stuff, do you give him the opportunity to make the team as a reliever and see what that looks like? Not that you're totally putting away the idea that he's a starter down the line, but this starting in the minor leagues thing just has not worked for him. He has not yet gone to 100 innings in a season. That's another name that could be thrown in there as well.
That's interesting. Wheels, would you go that way with Tink Hintz?
I mean, I don't know if I would, doing the reset that they're doing, but I've thought since they drafted him that he was going to be a reliever. I mean, when you have durability problems from the word go when you're 18 years old, and I'm not talking about injuries, although he had a minor thing last year, but they've been so careful with him since the day they signed him. It makes me think that they have concerns about something. I mean, again, when you're this far into a minor league career as a starter and you haven't thrown 100 innings in a year yet, how long before you can be a viable regular rotation member in the big leagues? I mean, we're probably looking at another 2 or 3 years before you could even think about throwing 170, 180 innings. So in the meantime, now I wouldn't do it automatically, but I think it should be open for consideration at some point this year. What, nobody in the Brewers organization, I know we're going back to them, but there's a reason for that. Nobody looked at Josh Hader and said that guy's automatically a reliever, but they stuck him in the pen because they needed a reliever, and it turned out he was so good at it they didn't want to put him back in the rotation. And other teams have gone that route with guys too. And as Matt points out, doing it in a short term doesn't mean it's forever. It didn't mean it was forever for Carlos Martinez. It didn't mean it was forever for Adam Wainwright. So we don't have to look at anything in the short term as a forever move.
What about Matthew Liberatore, Bernie?
Well, I want to say something about Hentz. Listen, I'm not opposed to them trying anything, but realistically, if a guy is in the minor leagues and he throws hard and he's got a lot of ability, there's no doubt about it, but he has been shut down frequently. And he's been shut down frequently on a schedule where he's had 4 or 5 days in between pitching. The job of a reliever, it can be a meat grinder. I mean, because you're not only, appearing in 3 games a week, let's say, you're also getting up, you're warming up, you're sitting down, you're warming up, you're sitting down. If he's fragile, which I think he is to an extent, I think he would be more fragile in a relief role because, yeah, it would be fewer innings, but that's really not the point. I mean, starters pitch more innings overall, but starters also get a nice long break in between assignments. In the bullpen, you don't have that luxury. It's the innings are much more difficult, especially if you're used in high leverage situations. So I don't know. I mean, anything goes, but I'm just offering a little bit of caution there because that's not a place for fragile pitchers who have a pretty concerning history of breakdowns. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
And all that means is the team probably is going to have to invest more time then say he's not going to be a major leaguer until 2027. I mean, he averages 4 innings a start, and look, maybe that's okay. We're doing a reset here. This is not a team trying to squeeze every last win out of this roster. If you think that by building him up to 120 or 130 innings next year, and then 150 the year after that will eventually make him a quality major league starter, then do that. That would be great. There's no hurry.
No, I think Liberatore could be a really important guy.
That's my guy there.
He's got nasty stuff. But just leave him alone. Quit. No more of this. I don't want any more of this stuff where, he's a starter or we're going to use him as the opener 5 or 6 times. Let him get in the routine and just let him go. Because I think I think with some of the changes they've made to his pitch arsenal, and I think Dusty Blake is going to do even better with some other things that they have in the works. And I understand they're going to have better technology next season that'll help them change the shape of pitches and such. So yeah, if they commit to him as a reliever, I think he can be a real asset down there.
I agree. Yeah. I actually think that he's a reliever from this point forward. And actually, when you go back to where they first challenged him, it was, we got to get you to come out of the gate when he was a starter, get you in that first inning, bringing it. I mean, let's go, bring some heat, be aggressive. Well, a reliever, I mean, that's exactly where you want to be. I mean, you come out of the gate, you throw upper 90s. I think he's embraced it. You can tell that his confidence is through the roof. I'm going Liberatore on the back end of my pen, and I love the Ryan Fernandez development too.
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
think those two could be really good. And this is assuming if you're just joining us, and it would be a rightful assumption that Ryan Helsley and Andrew Kittredge are gone. And there are others. There are other candidates.
They got some kids in the minors too.
Yeah. They did play with Graceffo as a reliever, but Kevin, let's go to Matt on this one. What do you see for Graceffo? I mean, he's back to being a starter, isn't he?
Yeah, I would think so. I thought he showed, he looked really good in spring training last year, and then I had no real issues with what he showed at the big league level when he did get that just that slight opportunity. Now, as the season went along at AAA, he was in front of McGreevy when the season got started, and McGreevy eventually jumped over him, and we saw what McGreevy did in his opportunities. So I want to see these young. You got to know what you have with these young guys. That's one of the things that already startles me about next year if they aren't able to trade a Michaelis and a Matz. And I know there's going to be talk about Matz in the bullpen, but he has made it very clear he wants to be a starter. If you walk into spring training and you've got Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Andre Palante, Miles Michaelis, and Steven Matz on the roster, are you really opening up that much of an opportunity for young pitchers? Maybe Matz goes to the bullpen. You're probably going to deal with an injury at some point, but I want there to be a clear path for a Michael McGreevy, for a Gordon Graceffo to at least try to go in and win those jobs. And look, there some of Graceffo's, whether it's the velocity, whether it's the swing and miss, like that, some of it's not great. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he projects out to be this high level starting pitcher, but I don't think he has been given much of an opportunity. And in the small opportunity he was given, I thought he did just fine.
I'm going to counter. I am done on Graceffo as a starter. Done. His strikeout rate has gone down each of the last 3 years. He gave up 20 home runs last year in 26 starts. He's now got 48 games and 34 starts at the AAA level, and his ERA is 4.9. That's not going to get better against major leaguers. I mean, it can, but not while your strikeout rate's going down. I would be more apt to say, look, let's put you in the pen, throw all out, throw as hard as you can. Let's pick your best secondary pitch and let's roll with that. And again, I think part of the reason I'm saying this is they don't need 4 guys at Memphis as backup starters. You don't need 4 guys. And, you need maybe 2 or 3. And then, think about all the guys that we haven't even seen at Memphis yet who are either going to be at AA, ready to move up, or will actually be moving up this coming season. There's room for a guy. And this is where you maximize talent, right? This is a guy who in short stints in spring training a couple of years ago was showing 98, but he's not throwing that in games as a starting pitcher at AAA. He's not showing swing and miss. He's given up a bunch of home runs. He's basically given up a home run a game. Starting pitchers that give up 30 homers a year, it's not the worst, but when you're also giving up, like this past season, 152 hits and 130 innings, something's got to change, because with strikeouts going down and stuff playing down, I got to find a way to turn that guy into an asset rather than a guy who's going to go make 20 more starts at Memphis. If I need starters, I've got those guys. I think Quinn Matthews is going to be at Memphis, right? He's going to be one step away, not to mention McGreevy, who I think is already shown he's ready for a more extended look. At some point, take what you have and get the most out of it instead of playing it too big for the long term. Now, I feel a little differently about Hentz because Hentz is younger and we haven't seen those holes develop yet, right? He still misses bats. He's still a guy that, if you keep him rolling along, you might see him as a top 1, 2, 3 starter in a rotation. I think Graceffo is a 4 or a 5 at this point. Is that more valuable long-term than a guy that might be able to come in this year and throw up some bullets and maybe be a factor in your bullpen?
I like Graceffo out of the pen. I don't know if they're going to go that route now. Let me throw one more bullpen name at you, Bernie, because we were falling all over ourselves about this guy at the end of spring training, Riley O'Brien. That we couldn't say enough great things about him. Of course, he gets hurt, missed most of 2024. What about O'Brien?
Well, anybody that throws that hard is going to get a long look. Whether he can show control, and maybe he needs to develop something slow to offset the gas. The other thing is he going to be able to stay healthy? There's a lot of questions with him, but the potential is obvious. The talent, the raw talent is obvious. So he'll go into spring training. I don't think there's any question. He'll go into spring training as part of the mix, and he'll have to pitch his way onto the team. And then you go from there. So, yeah, I think that's a name of one to watch. But he still does have a lot to prove as well. And but the talent is eye-opening. So, and I know that I know that this was one of the guys that Chaim Bloom identified to John Mozeliak in the front office, that go grab him if you can, because he's got a lot to work with. So
yeah, this may be a guy too that it's just about like what you're throwing. I mean, if you look at what he did now, again, very, very small sample size, but his fastball, he throws the sinker at 96, 97 miles an hour. He's in the top 10% in baseball in the velo on that pitch. That pitch was super effective. The league slugged 267 against it, only hit 200. Now, granted, it's only 89 pitches. We can't make a huge judgment on that. But his slider and curveball got destroyed. So maybe it's more of a, hey, you need to throw that pitch 70% of the time and see what happens, as opposed to, necessarily needing a new pitch. And I would also, if it were me, I would can one of the two off-speed pitches. You're a reliever. You don't need a curve and a slider. Pick one that you're going to execute the best, work only on that one, throw that sinker 2/3 of the time, and you might get an effective guy because, again, top 10% velo is a guy that you can do something with if you can just shape that right. And I think you're right, Bernie. The other part of it is keeping him healthy. If we can keep him on the field, that'd be great.
And Matt, Kevin made the point earlier that, there could be a free agent out there. It's a bullpen rich market out there. You could snag a couple of guys and hold the fort down a little bit, and not spend too much money.
Yeah, kind of like they did with, even though he didn't end up pitching, Keenan Middleton was a relatively late signing. There's going to be guys like that available. This is, especially this year, where the market, I think, is going to be even more depressed because of so many teams leaving Bally and going to their own thing.
Yeah,
I think the Cardinals are really lucky that their revenue cut was only the 23 or the 27% or whatever it was. These teams that are just completely leaving and doing it on their own, it's going to be a much more extreme cut. So I would think there's going to be a lot of teams looking to cut payroll this offseason. So we're going to be 2 weeks out from spring training getting underway, and it's always true that there's a lot of good guys out there. I think it's going to be even more true this year.
I love this conversation about pitching, but I'm going to shift it a little bit to, I just love talking about what the 25 team is going to look like in terms of roster, because John Mozeliak told me yesterday when I brought up Milwaukee, and his answer was, when I asked you, are you patterning anything you do after what Milwaukee did? And he said, they did trade away their best pitcher and still won the division going away. And a lot of it was because their young players developed. So that's how we're going to be successful. Young players are going to have to come through for us, the expectations. So Bernie, let's talk about who those young players are. Mason Wynn's already passed that test, but he's got to be good again. Jordan Walker's an obvious one. Nolan Gorman's one. Alec Burleson is one. Those would be four biggies for me. What do you say?
Yeah, and I think Lars Nootbaar's moved past the stage of being considered a young player.
Yeah.
He's still a relatively inexperienced player, but Walker and Gorman are hugely important to the shape of the 2025 Cardinals, whether that team will get better offensively or stay the same or get worse. It's incumbent upon them to just get in a groove and stay there. And hopefully Brant Brown, the hitting coach, will make a difference with them. I think fresh opinions, fresh looks, fresh voice can make a world of difference. And he comes from a more advanced background than the people that they've had in the dugout as batting coaches the last couple of years. The old school stuff there's always a place for that, but sometimes you got to remember the generational divide, which still exists. People my age, or maybe even people Tom Ackerman's age and Matt Pauley's age, and there's almost like an age cutoff where if you reach a certain age, and I don't know what that age is, but if you reach a certain age, it's like you spend your time, you're typically spending your time, to use that old expression, just yelling at clouds, just screaming at clouds about analytics, how analytics are ruining the game, And they've become such a dirty word. They're obscene, some of the people that just are obsessed with this in a way of just hating everything to do with it. Not only ignore history, because analytics have always been there, just not called analytics. But the other thing is that I don't know I've never understood people who are opposed to giving players all the tools they need to be good. But back to the generational divide, the young guys love this stuff. They're well versed in it. They're fluent in it. They know exactly they look at the data and they take the time, they quickly identify what's wrong, what they got to do. They can't get enough of this stuff. So I would just say to, people of my generation, you don't really need to go outside and yell at clouds. It's okay. The young guys want this, actually. No one's forcing it on them.
That's right.
Anyway, I had to kind of get that off my chest. But no, I tell you a guy, and I think maybe we mentioned him last week, but I'm going to do it again. It kind of concerns me when I hear Mo and some of the people talk about, the outfield and this and that and this and that. And they're talking about Ciani. And I get it, man. I love Ciani, what he did. Victor Scott has got to be given a chance to be your regular center fielder. If you're not bringing anyone in and you're not going to play Newport center, which you probably shouldn't because he'll get hurt, more chance. Victor Scott, especially after Ryan Ludwig taught him some stuff and he came back with that toe tap and he was starting to really hit the ball with authority, but Victor Scott gives you something you simply don't have. He'd not only be a leadoff man who is a legitimately lethal base stealer. I mean, there's no one in the organization in the same hemisphere as him, as far as like adding to your team, giving you a bold new dimension to your lineup that you simply don't have. Because all due respect to Mason Wynn, and we love him, he's not a good base stealer. Period. He's just not.
Right.
People tend to think of him as being some like 35 stolen base guy. No, he gets caught way too much, and that's where they need a base running coach. But anyway, Victor Scott has tremendous upside because we've seen the power. We know he can steal bases. We know that if he gets some outfield instruction, imagine that. If he gets some outfield instruction, he'll be able to take better first steps and have better reads on the ball. I don't want to hear about it. I know I sound grumpy, and I like Ciani, but I don't know. I like to use old school references just to make people laugh. I don't see Fred Lynn there, okay? I don't see Freddie Lynn. So maybe Scott needs to be more in the thinking and more in the planning, because if 2025 is about giving young players an opportunity in terms of someone that's got an offense changing skill set, that's Victor Scott. It isn't Michael Ciani. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but you can tell I'm pretty passionate about that. What is the point of having a reset? Oh, we're going to give the young guys opportunity. Is what? And so Victor Scott's going to be in the shadows, and you're what? And Ciani is Fred Lynn, circa 1975. Really? Come on now. Let's be logical here. Anyway, Go ahead. I'll shut up.
No, I share the Ciani thing. I understand that they love defense in center field. But I mean, and again, I hope Ciani makes improvements and makes it as an everyday big leaguer. I root for every guy, and he's a grinder, and he seems like an easy guy to like. But he was a 240 hitter in the minor leagues. Does that indicate future major league success? A 240 hitter, by the way, with no power. Which is, again, if you're an elite defender, we can live with no power, but you got to be an on-base guy of some kind. You've got to be a weapon of some kind. And with Victor Scott, we've at least seen him hit 300 in the minor leagues. We've at least seen that there's some potential there for more offense than what we've seen. Now, if Victor Scott goes into spring training and hits a $140, well, then he can go straight back to Memphis and not pass go.
Sure.
Right? I mean, like, I'm with you on that, but I wouldn't be banking on Ciani. I would definitely be banking on Scott, and Ciani's my fallback plan. And I think that, when we're looking at the overall theme of the young guys, and specifically Mason Wynn, I'm glad you pointed out, Bernie, where he fits. I'm not sure he fits as a leadoff guy. If Brendan Donovan's on this team, I want Brendan Donovan in the leadoff spot. That's your best on-base guy. Get people on base. Wynn in the 2 spot, followed by Contreras, might be a little bit of fun, because you got some bat speed, some athleticism. So there are some interesting things to do with that. But you hit it on the head. It is about Nolan Gorman and it's about Jordan Walker. And for me, with both of those guys, it's about the same thing. It's about swing decisions. Nolan Gorman's got to stop swinging at everything. He swings and misses more than any hitter in baseball. And it's not because he's swinging at good pitches. Mm-hmm. He expands too much. He chases too much. He tries to pull pitches that he can't pull. This isn't a major overdone, like a major remodel for him. He doesn't need a swing redo. He needs an approach. He needs to be able to attack pitches better. And I think the same way on Walker. Now, Walker has a natural thing in his swing where he sits on that back leg and it tilts back, and you can see he never even rotates the backside through. And that changes his attack angle, and it leads to him hitting the top of the ball sometimes. That's a concern that needs work, but it's not as big a concern as pitch selection. And I'm going to quote the best of all time. Ted Williams' number one rule of hitting is get a good pitch to hit. Number one, not have a beautiful swing, not have the fastest swing, get a good pitch to hit. Because I'll tell you what, if you go look at Jordan Walker, his bat speed is elite. His bat speed is elite. Now, he didn't qualify this year, but he would be like top 6 or 7% in all of Major League Baseball with his bat speed. So we know he can hit the ball hard. And by swinging at pitches low and away, which tends to be where he gets himself out, where are you going to hit those balls, guys? You're going to hit those on the ground. Those are outs for Jordan Walker. So, yeah, we need a mechanical adjustment, and he's been working on that. So I don't think that needs to be a new emphasis. But pitch selection is critical. So whether it's Brant Brown or it's something bigger when it comes to analytics that you're going to be able to convince these guys that somehow, some way, they have to accept sometimes that there are pitches you can't cover, right? I mean, every great hitter will tell you, you can't cover both off-speed and fastball, or you can't cover both in and out. You either pick a side or you pick a speed, and you have to be able to make better decisions on what you're going to swing at.
Well, to your point, and real quick, to your point, I wrote about this and talked about it a lot. It became a particular obsession of mine because hitting approach, it's all about hitting approach with this team anyway. The number of called strikes last year was not only just ridiculous, but it was also self-defeating. And one of their major problems with just the poor results with runners in scoring position, the Cardinals just looked at an unconscionable amount of called strikes with runners in scoring position. And I'm not, that's why I'm just like, well, what in the heck is the philosophy? Because you're right, Kevin. I mean, everybody knows it's about, man, you see a pitch you can drive it. But to just stand there and look at meatball pitches right down the middle time and time again, it just drove me crazy. And anybody who was trying to make a case for Turner Ward to stick around, I'm like, no. When the hitting approach is that awful, just a flat out failure, you need a new voice. And I'm glad that they did that. So if this team actually develops better judgment at the plate, as far as see strike, hit strike, blowing away pitch, stay away from it. I mean, I know we make it sound simple. I get it. But if they can just improve that basic entry-level understanding of a hitting approach, they'll be a lot better internally because of it. That's my hope anyway.
And one thing, like in being a part of amateur baseball and what's being taught to a lot of young players, a lot of people are selling out for power all the time, which is understandable because, look, when you're training a high school player, the thing that's going to get him a college scholarship or get him drafted is the bat speed. It's the power. It's the exit velocities, right? But when you get to the big leagues, it's not about those things anymore. It's about scoring runs. And that's why when you look at, like, if you want to learn how to be a good hitter, a great hitter, you should follow the best, not just the hottest name, not just the guy that hits the most home runs, but follow Mike Trout. Mike Trout is the guy who does exactly what you're talking about, Bernie. You're selling out for power most of the time, but when you got a runner on third base and one out, you're not selling out for power anymore. You're looking for the first ball that will drive in a run, and you have an approach that will allow you to do that. So if you're trying to pull the ball in the air and they're throwing you sliders on the outer half, you're not going to get the job done. And then when they throw the fastball, you have to swing the bat, right? I mean, we have to have – so I know that's a bit of an old man yelling at clouds thing, but it's
true, though.
It's a practical thing. The best hitters do that. Juan Soto does that. Aaron Judge does that. Mike Trout does that. When you have a chance to drive in a run, you back off the gas pedal just a little bit because the ball in play scores the run. The swing and miss does not.
Right.
Let me tell you a guy who does have it down, and I need to see this guy play on a more regular basis up here. He's 22 years old. His name is Thomas Sajasi. He is tearing up the fall league again. The Cardinals have something in this guy. I haven't seen anything that tells me that he's slowing down. In fact, Matt, he's the opposite of Nolan Gorman. He gets on base. He's got a 524 on base percentage in the fall league.
Yeah,
391. If Nolan Gorman doesn't grab, let's assume Arenado gets traded. If Nolan Gorman doesn't grab third base, JC might.
He might. I thought it was a little bit of an odd decision to throw him into the fall league this year after he was coming off his major league debut. You don't see a lot of guys with big league time in the fall league, but he has done exactly what he needs to do. He's the only Cardinal prospect who's an Arizona Fall League All-Star this year. You gave the numbers, Tom. He had some really good moments when he got up this past year, and you could just tell he's a young guy, and this was the moment was pretty big for him, and he had to kind of navigate through all of that, and he eventually did. He's I hate using these terms because it is kind of archaic, but we talk about guys who are just ball players. That's what he is.
Mm-hmm.
You can go put him wherever you want to put him. He's going to go out there. He's not going to embarrass himself. He's going to have a competitive at bat every single time. He's got the right mentality. I was on a caravan with him last year, and we were talking about the Texas Rangers where he got traded from. And I asked him, was he happy that the Rangers won the World Series? And he was basically like, no, that's the team that got rid of me. I have no affection. Like he's very, he's got his entire makeup is what you want. And I would rather see him in more of a utility role where you can bounce him around and do some things. But if he goes into spring training and he wins a job, good on him. He's going to be a really good player.
Yeah, he's the second baseman, Bernie, and you got one
you can
coming
use him
in
anywhere.
Weatherholt. You got Brendan Donovan, you got Gorman. I mean, the Cardinals have a plethora of options there.
Yeah, and Gorman's interesting because I'm in favor of keeping him, but the people that say maybe he ought to be offered around for the reason you just said, other than the fact that he just sort of reverts back to these troubling bad habits that he has at the plate. But they do have with Weatherholt is sort of a game changer in more way than one, because there's no doubt he's going to be an outstanding major league hitter, and he's going to be here sooner than later. He ain't going to be in the minor leagues very long. Well, he doesn't have an arm to play shortstop, which makes me think he doesn't have the arm to play third base either, ideally. So you're going to have too many people that can play second base. You're going to have, if Gorman gets a shot to play third, maybe that'll help him also just kind of reset and everything else, maybe make him more comfortable because that's his natural position. But there will be a point in time if Gorman can't get going offensively, and if you wait too late, you're going to kill his value, or you're going to really reduce it. But that's something with Sajasi on the way, and Weatherholt on the way. And the fact Donovan can play anywhere. I mean, yeah, they're going to have to make some tough decisions down the road, not too far down the road either. And Gorman could be one of those decisions: stay or go, stay or trade. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch, to monitor.
Let me say this on Gorman real quick, because I feel really strongly about this. We have seen this organization trade guys away, and obviously they go impact other teams. You're making all these changes right now. You have a new hitting coach. You have to give Nolan Gorman every opportunity in the world to become the player that we thought he was going to become with this new group. And honestly, if he fails completely and his trade value is tanked, I don't care. I'll give him a free pass on this one. This is a year where it's not about competing at the highest level. When you've got guys who have been top level prospects, if you've got somebody who's got the power that Nolan Gorman has, you have to give him every opportunity to get to that potential with the Cardinals, especially when you're making these moves right now with the idea that they're going to allow players to become the best version of themselves. I would be really upset if this team traded Nolan Gorman.
I'm with that. You know what'll happen, Kevin? He'll go out to another team and hit 50 home runs. That's what's going to happen.
I mean, he's got that kind of legit power. And look, I don't see why this is a hard thing for the team if Nolan Arenado is traded. Gorman was going to be a third baseman until they got Nolan Arenado. He was drafted as a third baseman. He's got an incredible arm. I mean, he's got the kind of arm, he's throwing 90-plus miles an hour across the infield. They only moved him to second base because they had Nolan Arenado. He's not a natural second baseman. He's a natural third baseman. All the other guys we're talking about are natural second basemen. Brendan Donovan is a natural second baseman. Weatherholt, I think, will be a phenomenal second baseman. I think he's got good feet and good hands and all of that. But as you pointed out, Bern, Matt, I don't think he has the arm for third. He's definitely got the athleticism for the middle infield, though. And I think Sajasi's best position is second base, too. But Gorman has all the physical ability to play third. The only reason he's not is because he's not Nolan Arenado, who's probably one of the 3 best defensive third basemen of all time.
Right.
No,
Exactly.
that's absolutely true. Let me wrap with this. Bernie, your latest feelings now on Nolan Arenado. You've been writing about this, talking about it on your YouTube page, The Bernie Show. It's a must subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you.
How do you feel about that?
I think they have to do it, and I think they will do it. Now, I'm not betting my paltry life savings on it, but if you're asking me to predict will he be traded or not, I would predict a trade. Cardinals will have to do a lot to give the other team relief on the contract, and some people will say, "Well, his contract's not all that bad." Well, in a way, it's not. No. But if you're picking up a guy that'll be 34 years old early next season, and he's already in a 2-year decline, you're probably going to demand that the Cardinals help you out by picking up a significant part of that contract. So if the Cardinals are willing to do that, I think the best thing for everyone concerned is to trade him. It just is. It makes all the sense in the world given the phase that the Cardinals are going into right now.
And then, Matt, you put Chaim Bloom and Rob Cerfolio and everybody else to work, and you go grab not only for Arenado and everybody else the best possible prospects you can go get. I mean, that's why they are here.
Yeah, we'll see. To Bernie's point, we'll see what they can get out of Nolan Arenado. It's kind of one of those sliding scales, how much money you pick up versus the level of prospect you get back. That's why the Ryan Helsley thing is so. Of all the players that are on the roster that they may trade, Helsley's the guy who can bring back the biggest haul. Kevin and I have talked about this. To take words out of Kevin's mouth, you're not getting a top 100 level prospect for Nolan Arenado. I think that's right, but if you get some pieces that Chaim Bloom looks at and says, you know what, this will work, I think that's where it can turn into something that's a net positive for the team.
Yeah.
And Kevin, that's Kevin. That's where he excels. Yeah. Bloom finds, he mines for those diamonds in the rough.
And look, maybe this is a case where you can still cut some payroll, but eat a bigger chunk of that and essentially buy better prospects, right?
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
That's a strategy if you're retooling your organization that makes sense. So let's say you owe him 30, right? And you're willing to pay 20 to get a great prospect. Okay, you're still saving $10 million a year and you're getting quality. Now, if you want somebody to take most of that 30, well, then you're going to get less quality in return. Like Matt hit it on the head. That's the sliding scale. So if I'm looking at what's best, if I can save 10 or 12 million, but also get quality in return, as opposed to maybe saving 20 and not getting that much quality in return, I'm going to pay for the guys. I'm going to pay to get the better prospects because the teams that want Nolan are going to be the good teams, right? And he's not going to approve a deal to a non-contender. So number one, just take any non-contender off the list. They don't matter. He's going to want to be on a contender. And there are some contenders. We talked about it on Friday a little bit, Bernie. I know Matt and I, we've talked about it. Tom, I don't remember if we have, but there are going to be third basemen that are needed in maybe Houston, in a place like that, where, by the way, he's a great fit for offense. A pull hitter like Nolan Arenado with the short porch with the Crawford boxes is a lot more appealing there than, say, in Dodger Stadium, where his flyouts there are going to be like the ones at Busch Stadium. Although we know his preference is probably the Dodgers. The question is, will they move their roster around for it? So when we talk about creativity and this reset, saving money has already been done. Saving more is fine. I have no problem with that because you're doing this differently right now. But I would rather invest that money to get better prospects than save more on Nolan Arenado, especially with the new TV deal now in place and that being less of an uncertainty.
The Gashouse Gang coming to you every day at noon on your social media channels. Subscribe to Bernie's show on YouTube, The Bernie Show. Search for Bernie Miklasz. Subscribe to KMOX Sports on YouTube. And I'll tell you, we're going to have some fun this week pairing up because we'll venture into other sports as well. We'll probably have similar pairings that we had last week based on everyone's schedule, but you'll find out prior to noon. Be looking at your favorite social media channels as we promote. Guys, thank you. Really great stuff.
Thanks.
Good talking ball with you all. It's easy to do. All you have to do is follow us, the Gashouse Gang, right here on KMOX. Our producer is Drew Young. Thank you, Drew. We'll see you all real soon.